storm had passed, but the sky still hung heavy with bruised gray clouds, as if the heavens themselves were mourning something unseen. The air smelled of wet asphalt and pine sap, a strange calm after a night of thunder that had shaken the small town of Millstone Hollow to its bones. The highway that cut through its heart was nearly empty, save for a rumbling convoy of motorcycles, engines growling low like wild beasts waking from slumber. They called themselves the Iron Shepherds, a rough, weathered group of men and women who'd seen enough of life's ugliness to stop caring what the world thought of them. To strangers, they looked dangerous. To those who knew them, they were a family, scarred, loyal, and fiercely protective of those who couldn't fight for themselves. Rex, their leader, rode at the front. His beard was streaked with silver, and his eyes, cold blue, like a winter river, missed nothing. Behind him followed Diesel, a giant of a man with tattoos crawling up his arms like vines, then Hawk, the quiet one who always kept a first aid kit strapped to his saddlebag, and Lacey, the only woman in the pack, whose gaze could melt iron when she was angry. They were heading north toward a charity event, a veterans fundraiser. But none of them knew that fate had planned a detour far more meaningful than anything money could fix. It started with a sound. At first, Rex thought it was just wind whistling through the trees, but then he saw her. A tiny figure on the side of the road, no older than 7 or 8. Her pink shirt was smeared with dirt, her shoes mismatched, and her small body trembled as she stumbled toward the oncoming motorcycles. The bikers slowed immediately, their engines coughing into silence as she ran straight into the middle of the lane, waving her arms frantically. "Please!" she screamed, voice breaking like thin glass. "Please, help my mama. They're beating her." The words tore through the air. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The girl's eyes were wild with terror, tears cutting streaks through the grime on her cheeks. Her knees gave out and she collapsed onto the gravel sobbing. Rex was off his bike before the others could react. He knelt beside her, lowering his voice. Hey, easy, sweetheart. Who's hurting your mama? Where is she?" The little girl gasped between sobs. "At the old farmhouse down the dirt road past the creek." "2 men, she hiccuped. "They locked the door," she's screaming. Diesel's jaw tightened. Hawk exchanged a glance with Lacey, whose hands were already trembling. Not from fear, but fury. Rex stood up slowly, scanning the horizon where a narrow dirt path snaked through the trees. He didn't need more information. He'd seen too many bruised women, too many broken homes. This was not something they could ignore. "Diesel, Hawk with me," he ordered, his tone clipped but calm. "Lacey, stay with the kid. Keep her safe." The engines roared to life again, shattering the silence. Birds scattered from the treetops as the 3 bikes tore down the dirt road, mud spraying behind them. The wind lashed their faces, carrying faint echoes. Shouting, maybe. Rex wasn't sure until they rounded a bend and saw it, an old farmhouse, slumped in the clearing like a wounded animal. One of the front windows was shattered. Rex didn't stop to think. He skidded to a halt, leaped off his bike, and stormed toward the porch. Through the open door came the unmistakable sound of a woman crying. And a man yelling. He motioned for Diesel to circle around the back and Hawk to cover the left. Then, without warning, he kicked the door open. Inside, chaos. A middle-aged woman lay on the kitchen floor, her arm shielding her face, while a thick-set man stood over her, his fist raised. Another man leaned against the counter, smirking, a beer bottle dangling from his fingers. "What the hell?" The first man started, but before he could finish, Rex was already on him. One swift punch to the gut sent the man sprawling backward. Diesel appeared in the doorway, grabbed the second man by the collar, and slammed him against the wall so hard the plaster cracked. "Who are you people?" The smirking man spat, struggling. "Friends of the lady you're hurting," Rex growled. The kitchen filled with heavy breathing, the stench of fear thick in the air. The woman scrambled back, clutching her bruised face, whispering, "Please, stop, they'll come back." Rex crouched beside her, his voice gentler now. "They won't. Not while we're here." Outside, Hawk stood watch, scanning the tree line. He saw movement. "Someone running." "Rex," he called. "There's a third one." Before anyone could react, a gunshot cracked through the air. The bullet missed Diesel by inches, splintering a cabinet door. The bikers dropped low as Diesel roared, tackling the gunman who had appeared from the hallway. The struggle was brutal and short. When it was over, the 3 men were restrained with zip ties pulled from Hawk's pack. The woman, her name, they soon learned, was Carla, sat trembling, clutching her daughter's torn backpack like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Rex exhaled slowly, his adrenaline still surging. "They're done," he said. "Cops can handle it from here." But when he looked at Carla's eyes, wide, hollow, lost, he realized something. The police would take the men, yes. But for Carla and her little girl, this was far from over. It wasn't just about saving them. It was about what came next. And Rex had a feeling this was only the beginning. The sirens came 15 minutes later, slicing through the quiet woods like cold steel. By then, Rex and his crew had already subdued the 3 men, keeping them tied and face down on the kitchen floor. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up, tires crunching on gravel. 2 deputies stepped out, hands on their holsters, eyes narrowing as they took in the sight of leather jackets and roaring motorcycles parked in the mud. Rex raised his hands slightly. "Relax, boys, we called you." The sheriff himself, an older man named Jeffers, stepped out last. His uniform looked like it had seen more miles than his patrol car, and the deep lines around his eyes told a story of a man who'd seen too many things he wished he hadn't. "Rex Dalton," Jeffers said, squinting. "Didn't expect to see you here. Last I heard, the Iron Shepherds were raising funds for veterans, not breaking into houses." Rex gave a short nod. "And last I heard, you still cared about stopping men who beat women." That shut him up. Jeffers glanced toward the woman on the porch. Carla, wrapped in Diesel's leather jacket, clutching her daughter tightly. Her left cheek was swollen, her lips split, but the relief in her eyes spoke louder than any bruise. Jeffers sighed. "All right. Let's get statements." As the deputies loaded the 3 handcuffed men into the cruiser, the little girl, Maddie, peeked from behind her mother's arm. Her big brown eyes, still red from crying, met Rex's. "Are they gone for good?" she whispered. Rex knelt, the weight of his leather vest creaking softly. "They won't hurt your mama anymore, sweetheart. I promise you that." Maddie nodded, trying to smile, but her lips trembled. Lacey walked over with a small thermos. "Hot cocoa," she said softly. "Best thing for bad days." She poured a bit into a cup, crouching to Maddie's height. The girl hesitated before taking it, the steam fogging her lashes. Jeffers stepped beside Rex. "You got lucky," he muttered. "Those guys, Carla's ex and his buddies, been trouble for years. We've booked them before. But she never pressed charges. She's pressing now," Rex said firmly. The sheriff gave a slow nod. "Maybe. But these kinds of wounds don't stop bleeding just because the bruises fade." Rex didn't answer. He was looking at Carla, who sat staring at nothing. The kind of stare that came from living too long in fear. Later, after the police cars rolled away and the farmhouse was quiet again, Rex turned to his crew. "We can't just leave her here." "Then what?" Diesel asked. "Take her to the motel." "We don't run a shelter, boss." "No," Rex said slowly. "But we got the clubhouse." Hawk frowned. "You're saying bring her and the kid there? You know how that'll look." Rex's jaw set. "I don't care how it looks. She's got nowhere else." Carla looked up, startled. I don't want to be a burden." "You've already done too much." Lacey shook her head. "Honey, being kind ain't a burden. It's what people should do." Carla's lips parted as if to argue, but Maddie tugged her sleeve and whispered, "Please, Mama, can we go with them?" And that was that. The ride to the Iron Shepherd's clubhouse was quiet. The sky had turned a deep indigo, the first stars flickering to life. Carla rode in a borrowed helmet, her arms wrapped around Maddie as Diesel led the way on his bike. The wind whipped their hair and faces, but for the first time in years, Carla didn't feel trapped. She felt moving. Toward something uncertain, yes, but away from the past that had chained her. The clubhouse sat on the edge of town. An old converted warehouse with a hand-painted sign and the faint glow of warm lights spilling from its windows. Inside, it wasn't the chaos outsiders imagine. There were couches, framed photos, and a long wooden table scarred by years of laughter and spilled drinks. When Carla and Maddie walked in, the room went silent. Half a dozen bikers looked up from their food, confusion flickering across their faces. Rex spoke first. "This is Carla and her daughter Maddie. They're guests here. Treat them like family." That was all he needed to say. Lacey showed them to a small side room with a bed and a heater. "It ain't fancy," she said softly. "But it's safe." Carla ran her hand over the quilt, her fingers trembling. "Safe," she repeated, like it was a word she hadn't spoken in years. Maddie had already curled up on the bed, her tiny hand still gripping her mother's sleeve. Within minutes, she was asleep. Outside, Rex stood leaning against the railing, staring at the horizon. Hawk joined him quietly. "You know this ain't gonna end easy, right?" Hawk said. "Guys like that don't just disappear. They'll come looking." Rex's eyes hardened. "Then they'll find us waiting." Hawk gave a slow nod. "And if the law says we went too far, then the law can take a number." Rex muttered. "That little girl asked for help. We gave it. That's the only rule that matters to me." Behind them, the night hummed with crickets and distant thunder. In the quiet warmth of the clubhouse, Carla stirred in her sleep, unaware that danger hadn't vanished. It had only changed shape. And as Rex watched the dark horizon, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Morning crept in slowly over Millstone Hollow, spilling pale gold light through the cracked windows of the Iron Shepherd's clubhouse. The rain had stopped completely, leaving behind a clean, sharp scent that mingled with the faint aroma of coffee brewing in the kitchen. The place was quiet except for the low hum of an old radio playing a country song about redemption and regret. Carla woke first. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her looked unfamiliar, the sheets smelled faintly of leather and detergent. Then it came back in fragments: the beating, Maddie's scream, the roar of motorcycles, and those men with kind but rough faces who had appeared like avenging angels in the storm. Her gaze moved to the small form curled up beside her. Maddie was still asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in days. Carla brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's cheek, whispering, "You're safe. Baby, you're safe now." She didn't entirely believe it herself. When she stepped out into the main room, Lacey was there, hair tied back, flipping pancakes on a skillet. She glanced up with a small smile. "Morning sunshine. Hope you're hungry." Carla blinked, unsure how to respond. "You made breakfast." Lacey smirked. "Well, I didn't wake up looking like this just to let the boys cook. They'd turn this place into a disaster zone." Carla almost laughed. A small, shaky sound that surprised even her. She sat at the long wooden table, wrapping her hands around a warm mug Lacey slid over. Moments later, Rex appeared from the back room, buttoning his vest. "Morning," he said gruffly, but his tone carried something gentle underneath. Carla straightened. I wanted to thank you again. For last night. I don't know what would have happened if." Rex raised a hand. "You don't owe us thanks. You just focus on getting back on your feet." "Back on my feet," Carla repeated softly, her eyes distant. "It's been so long. I'm not even sure what that feels like anymore." Rex pulled up a chair opposite her. "You work anywhere? Got any folks around?" She shook her head. "My parents are gone. I used to work at the diner, but when I got with Rick, he didn't like me talking to other men. So I quit. Then it was one thing after another. You know how it goes." Rex nodded, though his eyes darkened. He knew that pattern too well. The slow erosion of a person until they forgot who they used to be. Lacey set down a plate of pancakes, syrup dripping golden over the edges. "You'll figure it out," she said firmly. "Until you do, you and Maddie are safe here." Carla's eyes welled up. "I don't even know you people. Why are you doing this?" Lacey's expression softened. "Because someone once did it for me." The silence that followed was warm, heavy with understanding. Meanwhile, Diesel and Hawk were outside, checking the perimeter. They weren't paranoid by nature. But something about the night before didn't sit right. The men who attacked Carla weren't just drunk bullies. The one who fired the gun had military tattoos on his wrist and an old scar near his temple. Organized. Controlled, not your average drunk. "Boss," Hawk called out when Rex stepped outside. "We found something." Rex followed him to the gravel near the back fence. Hawk pointed to a deep tire tread, still fresh. "Truck. Came through sometime after we got in last night." "Someone scouting?" Rex asked. "Maybe," Hawk said. "Or maybe those friends of Carla's ex ain't done." Rex's jaw flexed. "We'll keep watch tonight. No one rides alone till I say so." Back inside, Maddie had woken up and was laughing softly with Lacey over a pancake shaped like a heart. The sound hit Rex harder than he expected. Something pure and fragile in the middle of all this grit and danger. Later that day, Carla asked if she could step outside to get some air. Rex nodded but sent Lacey with her, just in case. They walked down the small trail behind the clubhouse, where wildflowers grew in tangled clusters. Carla stared at the sky, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said he'd never stop looking for me. That if I ever ran, he'd find me." Lacey glanced at her. "You ran, didn't you?" Carla nodded. Tears threatening again. I tried twice before. He always found me. Last night was the first time I really thought we'd die. Lacey placed a hand on her shoulder. You didn't die. And he's not finding you this time. Not with us around. The Carla looked at her, something fierce and uncertain flickering behind her exhaustion. You talk like you've done this before. Lacey's eyes darkened for a moment. Let's just say I know what it's like to run from the wrong kind of man. And I know how it feels when nobody believes you. The two women stood there in silence, the wind rustling through the grass. Then Carla said softly, "Thank you." By evening, the clubhouse had turned lively again. The Shepherds gathered for dinner, trading stories and teasing each other like a real family. Maddie sat beside Diesel, wide-eyed as he showed her how to braid a paracord keychain. Rex watched from across the table. Something in him stirred. A feeling he hadn't had in years. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe it was just the quiet satisfaction of doing something right for once. But that feeling didn't last. Because when night fell, Hawk caught movement at the edge of the property. Headlights, idling just beyond the trees. A black pickup truck, engine humming low. He moved silently back inside, met Rex's eyes, and murmured, "They're here." Just like that, the peace shattered. The night felt too still. Too deliberate, as though the woods themselves were holding their breath. The distant hum of that black truck grew louder. Circling once around the property like a predator testing the perimeter before the kill. Inside the clubhouse, the laughter had died instantly. Everyone felt the shift, the cold ripple of danger slithering back into their lives. Rex stood from his chair, calm but razor sharp. Lights off. Quiet. The bikers moved without hesitation, flipping switches until the clubhouse was cloaked in near darkness. Only the orange flicker from the wood stove lit the room, casting restless shadows that danced across leather jackets and tense faces. Carla froze, clutching Maddie against her chest. "It's him," she whispered, voice trembling. "It's Rick, I know it is." Rex met her eyes and gave a small nod. Not of agreement, but assurance. "Has not getting through that door." Diesel and Hawk took positions near the windows. Lacey guided Carla and Maddie toward the back hallway where the bedrooms were. "Stay low," she murmured. "No noise. No matter what you hear." From outside came the crunch of gravel under boots, 3, maybe 4 men. Then a voice, coarse and slurred, cut through the darkness. "Carla, you think you can hide from me?" Rick's voice was heavy with alcohol and rage. "You think a bunch of old bikers can keep you safe?" Carla buried her face in Maddie's hair, shaking. Rex motioned for Hawk to stay put, then stepped quietly to the door. "He's armed," he whispered. Hawk nodded once, saw a shotgun in his hand. The others got bats. Rex exhaled slowly, jaw tightening. "Okay then." Outside, Rick shouted again, this time with a cruel laugh. "Come out, baby! Let's talk like family!" "You know you belong with me." Rex swung the door open and stepped into the porch light. His presence filled the space, broad, silent, unflinching. "She don't belong to you, pal," Rex said, his voice low, steady as thunder before the storm. "Turn around and leave before you regret what comes next." Rick squinted at him, then sneered. "Who the hell are you supposed to be? Some kind of hero?" "No," Rex replied. "Just a man who doesn't stand by while someone hurts a woman." That made Rick laugh, a cruel, broken sound. "You don't know what you're getting into, old man." He raised the shotgun slightly. "Step aside." The next moment moved in flashes. The metallic click of a safety being disengaged. Diesel bursting through the side door like a freight train. The sound of the shotgun going off, too loud, too close. The blast tore through the porch railing, splintering wood everywhere. Rex dove for cover, rolled, and tackled Rick before he could reload. The shotgun clattered to the ground as both men went down hard. Diesel swung his massive arm, knocking one of Rick's buddies clean off his feet. Hawk moved with precision, disarming the second man with 2 quick strikes. Inside the clubhouse, Carla pressed her hands over Maddie's ears as gunfire echoed. Lacey stayed by the hallway entrance, gripping a wrench she'd grabbed from the tool bench. Her heart pounded in her throat, but her eyes stayed locked on the door. Outside, the brawl turned brutal. Mud, fists, curses, each hit fueled by something raw and personal. Rick landed a wild punch to Rex's face, blood spattering his lip. "You think you're better than me?" he snarled. Rex spat blood, glaring up at him. "Yeah," he growled, "I do." Then came the final blow, swift and precise. Rick went down hard, wheezing as the wind left his lungs. Diesel loomed over him, his voice like gravel. "You done now, tough guy?" Rick tried to move, but Rex's boot pressed against his chest, keeping him still. "You don't get to touch her again," Rex said coldly. "You even think about it. And you'll wish we'd let the cops have you instead." Hawk tied the men up with the same zip ties they'd used the night before. The black truck sat idle, engines still running, headlights cutting through the fog like accusing eyes. Inside, Lacey peeked out the door and exhaled when she saw Rick down. "Is it over?" she called softly. "For now," Rex answered. Carla stepped out, trembling but determined. She looked down at Rick, her once charming, now pathetic tormentor. The bruises on her face seemed to burn anew. "You can't hurt me anymore," she said, voice quivering but firm. "You don't own me." Rick spat on the ground, eyes full of venom. "You think you're safe with them. They'll get tired of you. They always do." Carla took a step closer, anger rising where fear once lived. "Maybe. But even if they do, I'll still be free." Rex turned toward her, his expression softening. "He's not worth another word." When the sheriff's cruiser arrived again, Rex barely needed to explain. Jeffers took one look at Rick, handcuffed and bleeding, and just sighed. "Wes, I should have known you'd handle it before we got here." "He came looking for trouble," Rex said. "He found it." Jeffers nodded. "We'll take it from here. But Rex, this ain't gonna be easy for her. Restraining orders, court hearings. It's a long road." Rex looked toward Carla, who was kneeling beside Maddie, whispering softly to calm her shaking hands. "Yeah," he said quietly. "But at least now she's walking it." As the police car drove away, the headlights disappearing into the dark, the clubhouse fell silent again. The adrenaline faded, replaced by exhaustion and the heavy awareness that peace was fragile. A thin thread that could snap any time. Diesel poured 3 glasses of whiskey, sliding one toward Rex. "You think it's really over?" Rex stared out the window, watching the night reclaim the road. "No," he said after a moment. "Not yet. Guys like Rick don't go down without dragging someone with them." And somewhere deep in his gut, he knew it. This fight wasn't done. It had only changed shape. Days passed, and for the first time in years, Carla and Maddie began to taste something that almost felt like peace. The morning sun painted golden lines across the wooden floors of the clubhouse. Laughter, soft, genuine laughter, drifted from the kitchen where Maddie sat at the table, watching Diesel try to make pancakes shaped like motorcycles. He failed miserably, and she giggled until she nearly fell off her chair. Carla stood nearby, coffee cup in hand, smiling through tears she didn't even realize were falling. It had been so long since Maddie had laughed like that. So long since their mornings weren't clouded by fear. Lacey noticed and leaned against the counter, smirking. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Carla nodded, voice low. "I keep waiting to wake up and find out it's just another bad dream." "It's real," Lacey said firmly. "And you deserve it." Outside, Rex was tightening bolts on his Harley when Hawk approached. "Sheriff called," Hawk said, wiping grease off his hands. "Rick's in county lockup. He's got priors. And now he's facing assault and illegal possession of a firearm. Might be gone a while." "Good," Rex muttered. "Yeah, except." Hawk hesitated. "The other 2. Rick's buddies. Made bail this morning." Rex froze. "You're kidding." Hawk shook his head. "They've got friends in low places. Sheriff's keeping an eye out." "But..." Rex slammed his wrench on the workbench. Damn it. That night, Rex didn't say anything to Carla. There was no sense in frightening her, not yet. But he told Hawk and Diesel to keep watch in shifts. The memory of that black truck, idling like a threat, hadn't left his mind. Around midnight, while the clubhouse slept, Rex sat alone on the porch. The crickets were singing, the air thick with summer's humidity. He lit a cigarette, staring into the woods, the orange glow reflecting off his tired eyes. He thought of Maddie's small voice that night on the highway. "They're beating my mama." And how those words had cut straight through his armor. He'd been in combat zones. Seen horrors most men couldn't imagine. But that voice, it had shaken something deep in him. Something that hadn't healed since the day he'd lost his own little girl years ago, in a car crash that had shattered his world. Helping Carla and Maddie wasn't just about right and wrong, it was about redemption. About feeling useful again. But redemption, he knew, came with a cost. At dawn, Diesel found him still sitting there, cigarette butts scattered like tiny ghosts. "You haven't slept," Diesel said. "Couldn't," Rex muttered. "Too quiet." Diesel sat down beside him, sighing. "You think they'll come back?" Rex nodded. "Yeah, and when they do I'll be ready. Inside, Carla woke early, restless. The bruises had started to fade, but the memories clung like shadows. She went outside, surprised to find Rex still there. "You don't have to keep watch," she said gently. "You've done enough already." Rex looked at her, the lines around his eyes deepening. "You got a little girl who trusts me to keep her safe. That means I don't stop until I know the danger's gone." Carla swallowed hard. "Why do you care so much?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Because once, someone cried for help, and I wasn't there in time." The meaning hit her instantly. "Your daughter?" Rex's eyes flickered away, toward the rising sun. "Yeah. She'd be about Maddie's age now." Carla said nothing, only reached out and gently placed her hand over his. For a long time, they just sat there, the silence between them more comforting than words. By afternoon, Hawk returned from town with supplies. And news. "Those two who made bail. Sheriff says they disappeared. Haven't shown up at their trailer since they got out." Rex's stomach sank. "They're planning something." Hawk nodded grimly. "Maybe more than something." The crew sprang into motion. Diesel reinforced the door locks. Lacey gathered flashlights, radios, and a small first aid kit. Hawk loaded his licensed firearm, checked it twice. But when dusk fell again, the woods around the clubhouse stayed eerily still. Too still. Carla tucked Maddie into bed early, trying to keep her voice light. "Tomorrow, maybe we'll go into town," she whispered. "Get you some new shoes." "How's that sound?" Maddie yawned, smiling. "Can Miss Lacey come too?" Carla's heart warmed. "Of course, baby." But outside, danger was already moving. Around midnight, the Iron Shepherd's security cameras picked up 2 heat signatures creeping through the trees. Hawk saw it first. "Boss." He hissed through the radio. "We got movement." Rex was up instantly, grabbing his vest and his bat. Diesel flanked the back exit. Then crash. A window shattered, glass flew. Lacey screamed, ducking as a Molotov cocktail ignited against the far wall. Fire leapt up fast. Feeding on dry wood, smoke filled the air. "Maddie!" Carla shouted, racing for the hallway. "Get her out!" Rex bellowed. "Hawk, cover the side." Outside, the attackers yelled and laughed. Taunting, emboldened. "Come on out, shepherds! Let's finish this!" Bullets cracked into the walls. The bikers returned fire, aiming low, trying to drive them back. Diesel burst through the door like a human shield, tackling one of the men to the ground. "Go, Carla!" Rex shouted through the smoke. "Take the girl and run to the shed. Now." She hesitated for half a second, but the sight of the flames made her move. She grabbed Maddie, who was coughing, and ran through the back exit Lacey had cleared. Behind them, the fire roared higher, turning the night orange. Rex stayed, heart pounding, lungs burning, determined to hold the line until everyone was clear. But when he turned toward the doorway, he saw a figure standing in the firelight. Rick. He wasn't supposed to be out, but there he was, face twisted.